The following program may contain coarse language, violence, nudity, mature subject matter, or scenes which may not be suitable for all viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
And welcome back, everyone. The final hour of tonight's show. We've had such a great show. We had, let me see, Charlie Rumba and his song Aliens and Bob. Last hour, we had the Swami Tirtha, the Orange Cowboy, with us. And right now, we're going to be speaking with a gentleman that I've had the pleasure of speaking to many times over the past 33 years. He is one of the most respected parapsychologists when it comes to the paranormal. And of course, I'm talking about Loyd Auerbach. And Loyd, welcome back to the X Zone. Great having you with us. Thank you for joining us tonight, Loyd.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very good to see you, Rob.
Good seeing you too, sir. I think the last count that we've had you on the show over the past 33 years about 14 times.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and you're one of the most highly respected people in this field, and we're always honored to have you with us, Loyd, because I know you're a very busy man. You're teaching courses all over the place. You're doing paranormal investigations, and are you still doing the chocolates?
Once in a while, I got so busy with other things. I'm making them. Certainly for myself, but and for friends, but it's I'm not really trying to do a protracted sale thing. All right, at the moment. Down the road, when I retire, I'm hoping to open a chocolate shop.
Oh, I don't see you retiring, Loyd. I don't think you're the retiring type. I think you and I are
retirement.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. Listen, for the viewers who haven't had the opportunity of knowing who you are, can you give us a little bit of a bio, a little bit of who is Loyd Auerbach?
Well, somebody who's been interested in this subject of psychic phenomena since I was a little kid. I have a master's in parapsychology from John F. Kennedy University, which is now merged into National University. Been in the field for 43 years.
My gosh.
Pretty much as of last month. My first investigation, which was in one of my first graduate school classes, was 43 years ago. I think it was last week. It would have been 43 years. I've been working in the field since 1982 and teaching courses since around that time. Originally adult ed, but then I was teaching graduate school courses, a few undergrad classes. And for the last few years, I've been mainly teaching online courses through the Rhine Education Center, part of the Rhine Research Center.
My goodness, a busy man.
Yeah, I'm also president of an organization called the Forever Family Foundation, and on the board of directors of the Rhine Research Center, and still do the investigating thing. I've got a lot of former students who are in our Office of Paranormal Investigations network.
And then you've got the articles that you write, the books that you write, the media appearances that you do.
Yeah, all of that.
Plus the TV shows that you do.
Once in a while, yeah.
Busy man.
Not as much as they used to be, but yeah, I still do
them. Can you describe what a parapsychologist is to the audience? And is parapsychology a science?
So the field of parapsychology is absolutely a science. In fact, the Parapsychological Association is a member science, a member organization of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. There is two aspects to the field. Field of parapsychology studies psychic phenomena. So we study experiences, phenomena of consciousness, such as pulling information from the world around us without the use of our normal senses. We call that extrasensory perception. We study the idea that consciousness can affect matter and energy, all sorts of things, including biological stuff. That's called mind over matter or psychokinesis, PK. And we study the idea that consciousness can survive the death of the body and still continue in some form. That's one of my major focuses, in fact, over the last number of years. And a parapsychologist, depending on who you're talking to, may work in a laboratory, may work in a university, doing experiments and teaching. In my case, I am an educator in the field. and also do field investigation or field work in the subject. That's my main aspect of things.
In the past 43 years, Loyd, what advances have you seen when it comes to the profession of parapsychologist?
Well, there's a good side and a bad side. And we've seen a number of different research protocols, ideas, and that have been replicated. So in 43 years, I've seen things like research more moving towards looking at whether our bodies recognize, for example, what's going to happen before it actually happens, before it even percolates up to our consciousness. That's called presentiment. And by using biometric sensors, it turns out that, before you're shown something that's going to get you excited or upset or fearful, your body reacts 5 to 15 seconds. Doesn't sound like a lot of time, but the further out you try to predict something, we know, the harder it is to actually get it right, because the future plays around, is always in motion. Also seen a lot of research on an old idea, the idea that we know when we're being stared at, the sense of being stared at. And we've done remote staring experiments, which don't even allow the person to be in the same room, let alone looking directly at the staree, the person being stared at. It's all across video, which has been very successful, again, replicated quite a bit. There's been an enormous amount of work in remote viewing. Of course, the U.S. government program, which is also part of, it's the focus of the book I co-authored with the director of that program, the Stargate program, Ed May, and that's called ESP Wars. And then there's also been a lot of that application oriented too. So for archaeology and finding minerals and a number of other areas as well. And then probably the biggest area, it's not that big really, that is new, is really a concerted effort to do research with spirit mediums, with evidential mediums. Including looking into what's going on in their brains. So brainwave analysis, as well as looking into what parts of the brain are active, as well as the most controlled experiments possibly in social science being conducted at the Rhine Research Center with mediums. It's not double blind or triple blind, it's quintuple blind with great success. So there's little things here and there too that have happened with the field. And then there's the connection with consciousness studies, which has been happening more and more.
When it comes to the evidential mediums, and the research that's going into that, have they undergone what's the word I'm looking for here? Have they been put through MRIs when they're doing their mediumship, and what have the results of the MRI shown?
Well, there's been functional MRI, which is not the same as the MRI that we talk about with full, you're going into that tube. That can't be done. The idea of somebody being able to concentrate, even a psychology experiment would be difficult to do with someone inside an actual MRI. But
there's a clack.
Yeah, that could be a psychic experiment to see if you could actually add 2 and 2 while you're being distracted by that. But there's been some fMRI that's been done. Mostly it's been EEG analysis and looking at other types of analysis of the brain when this is going on. And what's interesting is that, first of all, there was a group of mediums that succeeded in a 1-year program of testing with more and more controls on them. That's the Rhine Research Center's research certified mediums. Other mediums have been tested for the Forever Family Foundation. And the ones that have worked in the brain research, it's been pretty clear that when they're having a conversation with the researcher, with you and I, what their brain waves, their brain state is one way. When they are pretending to speak to a spirit, because they're asked to talk to an imaginary spirit, their brainwave activity is closer to having a conversation with you and I. But when they go into the state that they are communicating ostensibly with spirits, whether they're doing that or not, their brain state is very different. Also, if they can do psychic readings of living people, that brain state is even different than the communication with spirits or the other. So regardless of whether or not they're talking to spirits, they believe that they are, and their brains are reacting in that way.
Because they believe.
Well, it's a question of whether it's belief or whether there's actually something going on. I mean, there certainly seems to be something going on in the brain. And we part of this is we call them evidential mediums because they can provide information that they could not possibly have known or even researched, which is always interesting. And that provides kind of the backup that something more than just they believe that their mediums is happening.
Yeah. Well, what I was trying to say is that in order for them to do what they do, they must believe in doing it themselves. Yeah, that's where I was going.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, I mean, an athlete has to believe that they can do what they can do.
Yes, that's right. If we can only get politicians to do that, we'd be all set, Loyd.
I think that there are some things that are impossible in this universe, and that might be one of them.
Loyd, you mentioned the Forever Family Foundation. What is that?
So the Forever Family Foundation is an organization that was started back in 2004, 2005, when a couple lost their daughter in a car crash. And it was a spirit medium, actually, who was brought to Fran Ginsburg through a neighbor who started actually helping her with her grief. Bob Ginsburg, the other founder, absolute skeptic, didn't believe in any of this stuff. In fact, he'd used some very choice words, would have used some choice words back then. I know, and he still does once in a while. But he was convinced that something was going on there because the information was coming through from his daughter just didn't make sense in any other frame of mind that he had. So they decided to start an organization by gathering first other people who also lost their kids, specifically, were having problems with grief. And it turned out that mediums, and there have been clinical studies, mediums can actually help alleviate grief. And so they really wanted to bring in, first of all, find a way to certify or to test the mediums and also check into their ethics and make sure that they were on the up and up, that they actually could participate in the grieving process with family members and help. They brought in scientists to create the tests. And part of the mission of the Forever Family Foundation is not only to support mediums in the family grieving process, but also support dissemination of information from scientific research on life after death, which is one of the reasons I'm involved. Last weekend, in fact, we had one of our grief retreats, grief transformation retreats. This one was in California. And, this is the third one I've been to. It's absolutely mind-blowing what happens over the course of the weekend with these people. And it's not just the mediums. There's also a grief counselor there. Somebody talks quite a bit about that. I talked about the evidence for life after death. But hearing from these people at the end of the weekend it's thrilling. And they were surprised to hear that the organization is all volunteer. No one gets paid. In fact, it's free to join the organization.
Loyd, stand by. You and I have to take a break. But before we do that, is there a website for the Forever Family Foundation?
It's foreverfamilyfoundation.org.
And we're back. Loyd Auerbach is our special guest this hour, XO Nation. Once again, for those of you who would like to get the website for the Forever Family Foundation, it's foreverfamilyfoundation.org. And Loyd, is there a way that our listeners can contact you? Or
the best way is either through Facebook, which is facebook.com/Loyd.Auerbach.author, or I'm going to give you my email because I have put that out there. It's just simply Prof Paranormal, as in Professor Paranormal. So profparanormal@gmail.com.
Super. Loyd, what kind of evidence is there that there is life after death?
Well, first we have, evidence that suggests or supports the idea coming from near-death experiences where people, of course, the classic is somebody has their heart stops, there seems to be lower or no brain activity. They go out of their body, they go through a tunnel, they see a light, they might see someone or have a conversation with someone at the other end. There's variations of what's there. They're told to come back. And in some of the instances of this, they change personality. I mean, there's been sometimes significant shifts in philosophy and personality. It's ended marriages. It's caused people to change careers. So it's a very impactful thing. But during that process, a number of people, when they first go out of their body or experience that, they can describe what's going on around their body, and sometimes not just what's around their body, but if it's in a hospital, they might go into another room or a different part of the hospital. They can describe sometimes from above exactly what's being done to them, something they could not visually see or even guess from if they could hear any narration of what's going on. And then in a number of instances, the person they meet when they go through the tunnel, they're surprised to find it's somebody they know who they thought was fully alive, but it turned out that that person actually has died just without their knowing. In fact, may have died just right before they had their incident as well. Those are called Picandarian experiences. So that's one. We also deal with, of course, mediumship, which certainly through the communication process, we've gotten a really, especially when we really tighten it up, we get really good indication that some significant process that's different than just normal psychic information is actually going on. We can bring in the reincarnation cases of children who remember previous lives, which are kids from 2 to 4-year-olds who can remember a life, and actually in some instances, not all of them, give enough specific detail, including names, addresses, information about how they died, all of that, so, which has no other explanation unless you want to claim that all these people are somehow faking it, which we're pretty sure is not the case in the cases that are investigated by people like Jim Tucker. And then the apparition cases that we have, and that's where I'm involved, which are cases where people in general, they see or experience someone who has just died, who they're unaware has died, again, that Picandarian experience, or they're getting that experience within the first couple of days, and they sometimes get information they did not know about that person. And then the longer term cases, which are the ones I investigate, we often have significant communication that's presented that, again, is hard to come up with an explanation. I've certainly had a couple of cases where they're really no motivation. No, they don't want fandom. They don't want fame. They don't want money. There's no explanation for this. And the information that's provided can only be verified in a very difficult way. So we have all of this that supports it. The problem is, of course, if you're a materialist, it's all psychic, but it's not life after death.
You know, ghost hunters talk about being in the paranormal field. How does being in the paranormal field differ from parapsychology?
Well, when you say field, you usually mean a field of study, but they're not studying anything. The majority of so-called ghost hunters and paranormal investigators, the most of them, unfortunately, they are out for an experience. They're not studying anything. They're not actually, they don't read anything except maybe things put out by the TV folks. Now, there's a small segment of them that are really interested in understanding the why. Why are people having these experiences? What's behind them? But parapsychology studies why people have these experiences, the kinds of people that have these experiences. We try to gather evidence in a concerted way. We look for alternate explanations, which certainly most ghost hunters rarely ever do. And we question quite a bit. And the very fact that so many of them are using devices they see on TV that cannot possibly detect ghosts, but they think they do, is a whole different piece. It's not scientific. It's hobby is what it is. And I know I pissed off ghost hunters saying that.
It's all right.
You know,
I happen to feel the same way you do about it.
Yeah, it's really, I've been trying to, my head's been bonking against the wall for years, for decades, trying to get folks to even pay attention to good sources of information. And I have on 2 occasions at 2 different events I went to, I don't really go to those ghost events anymore, but I've had people say to me, 2 different people say to me, why should I listen to you? You don't have a TV show.
Oh, you've got to be kidding.
No, I wish I was.
That is sad. That is sad, Loyd.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, there's so many of them that want to be on TV. I mean, now they can make their own shows for YouTube. But when back in the 2000s, I was going to some events or meeting ghost hunters or having them contact me. I'm making a TV pilot. It's like, good for you.
Yeah. I remember those days.
Yeah.
Why do you think people are attracted to these TV shows? And in my experience, I don't have the experience that you have, Loyd, when it comes to parapsychology or investigating the paranormal. But I watch these shows and I say, what a bunch of crap.
Yeah. Well, I think some people watch them for that very reason. I know people who know something about this field and they're
Mhm.
entertained by them. Now, hopefully the idea here is they're supposed to be entertaining so they can get ratings. But what happens is folks see these shows, they see regular people like plumbers doing this investigative stuff, which is very exciting because the producers make it exciting, or at least
Yeah.
for those people who think that they can do it or want to do it too. So there's an emulation thing that's going on, and that's why they watch the shows. Fans of one show might watch all the shows, but they might follow the methods that they see on one show and with one team on TV, and basically say that the rest is just entertainment. I've heard them say that too. So the subject matter is interesting. The experiences of ghostly phenomena, regardless of what it is, it's interesting, even if it's not ghostly, if it's got
Right.
an unusual explanation. But the shows, because production has made it into these just a template of sorts. There's two different variations of it, really. That's attracted people who want to do it themselves, and they watch the shows to either pick up tips or because their heroes, their TV heroes, are doing it.
What is your take on EVPs, electronic voice phenomenon?
Well, there's actually been some really good research before the TV show has made it popular. And that goes back to the 1940s, actually. But it has to be very carefully done. And part of the problem here is that recorders, it used to be in the 80s, we at JFK University, when we had our parapsychology graduate program, we would get people contacting us and saying, I've got a tape of I have an EVP. I have a tape of a ghost, a spirit voice. And inevitably, it was because cassette tapes were what they were. It was either the sound of the motor itself turning the tape that was recorded, or it was a CB radio, because a lot of cassette recorders picked up CB radio signals. When things went digital, all of that changed. But the problem with EVP just boils down to when you eliminate all the other possible explanations, like somebody subvocalizing, somebody whispering in the room and not saying that you didn't hear that, or your stomach growling. I've heard enough things that sounded like somebody's stomach growling, or a burp, and somebody swore that it said, "Hi, Chris." There's that interpretation. When you have some really good ones, then the question for us in parapsychology is, if there's no other indication of a spirit or ghost there, is it possible that the operator of the device, because of their real desire to get a voice, actually themselves affected that device? And we do know that living people from our research in the lab can affect electronic devices, random number generators, and other things.
Yeah.
So it's entirely possible that the people who always get EVP, because I've met those people, they're the ones who are putting that information on the recorder, not a spirit.
Loyd, stand by. We've got to take our mid-break. Please stand by. I can just imagine a lot of these ghost hunters. And when we come back, speaking about these TV shows, they all go to Waverly. They all go here. They all go there. And I'm trying to figure out why. Why go there all the time? What is it now called? Paratourism?
Yeah, I think that's about right. Paratourism is right. Yeah.
All right, Loyd, stand by, my friend. Exonation Loyd Auerbach is our guest. His website is profparanormal@gmail.com. And for those of you who would like to check out the Forever Family Foundation, it's foreverfamilyfoundation.org. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. Loyd Auerbach and I return after this short break. Loyd Auerbach is our guest this hour, Exonation. And Loyd, like I was saying before we went to the commercial break, all these ghost TV shows always end up at Waverly, and they go to Gettysburg and so on and so forth. As a professional parapsychologist and a professional, and I'm underlining the word professional in both those words, paranormal investigator, why is it that these spirits, if they're really there, tolerate all the intrusions into their privacy? And why don't they just go somewhere else? I mean, the spirits, not the investigators.
Well, I question whether there really are spirits at a lot of these places.
Yeah.
The first of all, there is a limit to the number of places you can go to for some of these shows, and they tend to want really spooky locations, especially ones with history, because the history at least enhances the story in many respects. We have to make a distinction, and we do make this distinction in parapsychology, even on the shows they sometimes do, between an actual entity, a conscious entity we call an apparition, a ghost, and what are called residual hauntings, or for us just hauntings. The idea that the environment can record emotion, it can record information, and that living people can pick that up. I mean, it's not limited to dead people. It also, the living leave these impressions behind. In fact, only the living leave these impressions behind. So a sanitarium, a closed hospital that had terminal ward, even an open hospital that has a terminal ward, people may feel the emotional downplay, the negative emotion that's there, that was left there. They may actually see impression or get impressions of people who were there, but that does not necessarily make them conscious. In fact, it generally doesn't. So when they're doing these kinds of things and they're going in and they're getting EVP and trying to communicate, there's a problem here. And that is, if there's not a conscious entity there, then there's no one to communicate with other than yourself, your unconscious, or other people that are present. And there's a lot of that I see in the locations. On the other hand, there are a number of locations. I mean, I was contacted a few years ago by a reporter here in the Bay Area who wanted to know if I wanted to come along. She was invited by a local ghost hunting group to go to this deserted, abandoned mansion in the hills above Stanford University. Some rich guy lived there a long time ago. It's been empty for 20 years, and they were going to investigate the place. And I asked her to ask them several questions. Number one, if nobody's lived there for 20 years, how do you know it's haunted? Number two, who owns the property? And are you going to be trespassing?
Yeah.
And so she came back to me, said, I'm not going. She said, they don't know who owns the property, and they have no reports that the place is haunted, just that it's abandoned. It's been left empty. And
Unreal.
that's typical. I have met people who just are looking for those places that look spooky, and certainly TV was looking for that. With that, so they're actually, maybe they have a couple of ghosts that are following them around.
Maybe,
screwing with them. If you're dead, you may be a little bored.
Loyd, in your opinion, is there a connection or a common thread between those people who are ufologists or have claimed to be abducted by aliens to the people who are Bigfoot investigators and those who have seen Bigfoot and those who see ghosts and hauntings and so on?
Not really. I mean, there might be individual experiences. I've heard that some people who claim to be abducted by aliens have a psychic opening, so therefore there might be something there. I hear all sorts of things about Bigfoot being other dimensional and time traveler and a robot. And I remember it being a cyborg from the $6 Million Man, but TV show.
I remember that one. Yeah, that was Lou Ferrigno, wasn't it? Yeah.
Excuse me?
Wasn't the Bigfoot in the $6 Million Man actually Lou Ferrigno?
No, it was Ted. What's his name? The guy played Lurch on the first one.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
The Addams Family.
Yeah. He was the first one. There was a second actor who played, I think, in The Bionic Woman. They used somebody different for that. So I guess the only thread that's common here is that these are things that are not scrutinized well enough by science or not acknowledged as legitimate. Academia in the United States has a serious problem with parapsychology, doesn't want to acknowledge it's real at all. But in other countries, that's not the case. Even in the UK, there's more than 20 universities that teach courses in this. And the responsibility, I think, for this real negative attitude in academia today is laid at the feet of the so-called skeptics, the pseudo-skeptics, because they really made a concerted effort to make everybody think this is all woo-woo. It's all the same thing. They have said there have been folks like the late Amazing Randy who, completely altered the truth in so many instances, just to make himself look better, or just to put forth an agenda. There was nothing to any of this. In 2011, one of my colleagues, Daryl Bem, who's a social psychologist, at Syracuse, excuse me, at Cornell University. He published an article. There was a paper that was coming out in a mainstream psychology journal of a 2-year project where he did a precognition experiment, again, hooking people up to biometrics. So it was called Feeling the Future, right? And before it even came out, when the journal put out their table of contents, essentially said what was going to be in the journal, there was a huge hue and cry in the academic world and amongst the pseudo-skeptics that this was not science, it couldn't possibly be right. And there were a few reporters who actually asked, have you read the paper? And the general response was, why would I? It's not possible. That's not science. That is completely unscientific.
That's right.
And when the paper came out, the conclusion was, well, his statistics must be wrong. But then very good people in the world of statistics looked at his stats and said, there's nothing wrong with this. So either ESP exists or we have to rethink the form of statistics that Daryl Bem actually used, which also is applied to a majority of psychology experiments and other types of scientific experiments. So if Bem was wrong because ESP doesn't exist, but the statistics were right, then there's a serious problem with statistics, and a lot of our scientific knowledge is wrong.
Time to rewrite the books, right?
Well, it boils down to there shouldn't be anything, as long as you can be ethical in human experience, that is off limits to study.
I agree.
You have to stay with ethics. And there's very little funding in parapsychology, unfortunately, but there is really good research. In fact, my colleague Ed May, who I mentioned earlier, who ran the Stargate program, he's done some of the best research in general on remote viewing and in other areas as well. And he published, he edited a 2 volumes book on ESP, skepticism and science. And he somehow, because of his personality, he's a great guy, he was able to convince skeptics, not disbelievers, but people who leaned that direction in many fields of science, to start looking at some of the research and include essays in the volumes, as well as people on the parapsychological side. And what turned out was a number of these folks from other fields of science, with Ed's cajoling, looked at the research and were shocked that it was good. Now, they also, some of them said that they didn't necessarily agree that it was, that you can say it's ESP, but they said the research is good. The quality of the research is excellent. It's, in fact, in some respects, some of our research is better than what's published in various science journals today.
Is remote viewing part of what the psychics use?
Well, remote viewing is a fancy word or phrase for clairvoyance, for real-time or precognitive ESP. It just refers to, rather than knowing what's in an envelope when I have it here in my hand, or what the card is that you might be holding, it is the location of the target is remote, is farther away. In fact, Ed likes to talk about, our book actually has the Russian side of the story as well, because Ed and Joe McMoneagle, who was the #1 viewer in the U.S. program, got to know some of their counterparts in Russia in the early 1990s, and found out that they were training a lot of people in the army to do remote viewing. And this General Alexei Savin, who was one of the people running the program, said we had remote viewers in the tanks in Chechnya during the Chechnyan conflict to help the tank guys know that when they went around the corner, there might be somebody with a rocket launcher. And Ed loves to say, Ed says, well, how far away was that? And they said 40 feet. It's like, well, that's not remote. So it's literally just a phrase covering ESP, getting information from a distant location or a distant time, space site.
We were talking before about other aspects of the paranormal. And when it comes to evidence, we talked about the, life after death. And is there any evidence for ghosts or apparitions?
The real evidence is, and first let me back up and say that parapsychology is a social science. We're dealing with human experience.
Right.
Psychology is a social science. Anthropology is a social science. Right. So that's important. We deal with consciousness. The very concept of ghosts is that consciousness survives the death of the body somehow and can interact with living people and with the physical environment. So that said, based on people's experiences and some physical indications, like usually physical activity that's unexplained, when there's something else going on with the ghost, so to speak, we can say that there are really good cases that support the concept that some people stick around after death and can in fact interact. Now, there's actually an alternative within parapsychology. We're not like a solid state model here. There are a number of people who are more materialist within parapsychology who have a different ESP perspective on what that apparition might be, that it's actually something very different, that's not conscious. It's just that when you pick up the information, you make yourself think it's conscious. But we have too many cases that are highly interactive with multiple witnesses across time that strongly suggest that some people at least can survive the death of the body and stick around.
Fascinating. One quick question before we go to our final break, Loyd, is the TV shows and Hollywood, have they been an asset to legitimate paranormal investigators and parapsychology, or have they been more of a deterrent to reality?
Well, I think there's a good and bad here. The good is that it's brought people, the paranormal TV shows especially, have brought people out of the woodwork who might never have admitted their interest in the subject. And of those people, some of them realize not too long after they get into it that there's more to look at, and then they might come over to our field. So we are getting, for example, the courses I teach for the Rhine Center, we're getting a lot more students than we have over time. I mean, we're going up in the number of enrollments that we've got. And that's, I think, because this is being talked about a lot more. On the downside, we have an awful lot of people that are doing bad stuff. I get calls from clients, from people who have had the local ghost hunting team in, and they get freaked out by the local ghost hunting teams. Sometimes that team will run screaming from the house in the middle of the night because they got an EVP that sounded like a growl, and they immediately say there's a demon here. And they also don't look for normal explanations. So we have to sometimes follow up with these people to kind of help calm them down, help them get past their fear, and give them a legitimate possible explanation for what might be going on. So that's the bad. And then, there's a lot of other, problems in terms of perception of our field because of a lot of that, what we see on reality TV.
You and I have to take our final break, Loyd. Please stand by. And explanation, Loyd Auerbach is our special guest. His email address is profparanormal@gmail.com. And once again, for the Forever Family Foundation, their website is foreverfamilyfoundation.org. And we'll be back as we wrap up this week here in the X Zone from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And we're back. Loyd Auerbach is my guest. His email address is profparanormal@gmail.com. And Loyd, I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your evening, your time that you usually hold for yourself to join us here on the X Zone. Always a great pleasure talking to you, Loyd. And I value your professionalism and what you've done over the many years, and how you and the people that you work with have worked so hard to get real paranormal and parapsychology where it is today. So my hat is off to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Why is everything on TV now demons? Where these ghost investigators or ghostbusters or whatever the hell they want to be called these days go in and yelling and try to provoke. Yeah. Why would anybody in their right mind do that?
Well, that's a question. Why would somebody in their right mind do that? Well, first of all, I think a lot of that comes from one particular show as a good template to begin with. And the demon thing, there have been a couple of people who truly believe in demons on these shows.
Yeah.
It's not realistic. But let's face it, Hollywood has always emphasized scary stuff when it comes to the supernatural. I mean, the fact is they're actually comedies. The TV show Ghosts that's on CBS right now, or the BBC version of that, is one of the best ghost shows I've ever seen. It's just absolutely wonderful. But in general, to get ratings, scare factors are what's going to really get the ratings. I mean, the Exorcist movie caused people to throw away or put away their Ouija boards. It had nothing to do with anything at that point. It's unfortunate, but it's the ratings thing. I mean, all these shows are about ratings. The very fact that they're doing investigations in the dark is a ratings thing. It's to make things look spooky. And that's always been the way that TV has been, to try to make things evocative, to really bring about some kind of tension or fear, just even momentary. So that's a big part of it.
The way I look at it, if a ghost is invisible at night, he's going to be invisible during the day as well.
Well, the fact is that if you look at the actual reports of apparitions of ghosts, the vast, like we're talking about 99% of these from all over the world are during the day or when the lights are on.
Really?
If it's at night. Yeah, people are not awake at 3 o'clock in the morning to see a ghost. So maybe you do have a ghost in your house, but you're not awake to see the ghost. And the ghost is not like tapping you on the shoulder saying, "Hey, buddy, wake up. I'm here to scare you."
Where do you see parapsychology going in the future, Loyd?
Well, I think we're getting closer and closer to consciousness studies, the folks who are actually looking at the question of what is consciousness? Where is it? I mean, is it in the brain? Does the brain create it? And there are all sorts of folks from different fields of science who are approaching it in very, very different ways, from the idea that the brain is we're just meat robots, we're just programmed, to the idea that there's something more here. Not only is it, like in the brain, but it also may be kind of out here, out in the world. And we may not even, our brains may just be like a TV set receiving consciousness from somewhere else. So there's a range of ideas and philosophies here. People are coming to this slowly, very slowly, from neuroscience, from physics, biology, from psychology. And we've been studying phenomena of consciousness. Psychologists study behavior. We study what does consciousness do to directly connect with the world. That's what ESP and PK are. Survival is, does it exist on its own? And we're finding a lot more commonality in all these fields now. And I think that's the direction it's really going to go. We may not even call it parapsychology anymore, because we may be part of this greater science of consciousness studies.
Loyd, it's the time where you and I have to say so long for tonight. But before we go, what is your message to the Exo Nation tonight?
To seek out good sources of information. If you really are interested in any form of psychic phenomena, take a look at places. You can start with the Forever Family Foundation for mediumship, but the Rhine Research Center, that's RHINE.org, so Rhine.org, is the longest running laboratory and center of study in the United States. That was the original Duke Parapsychology Lab back in the 1930s. So go there, take a look and see what's available there. The Society for Psychical Research just hit 140 years over in the UK. They exist on the web. They're very active. And and they have a science encyclopedia, truly well written for general public consumption, of learning about articles about all of this stuff. So go to some good sources, get recommendations from them, start there. And believe me, you'll have a whole world opened up to you that is not about yelling at spirits and getting EVPs. Much more interesting.
Again, Loyd, thank you so much for your time. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and the door is always open for you here in the X Zone. So until the next time we meet, my friend, take care of yourself.
Thanks very much, Rob. You too.
Good night, Loyd.
Good night.
And Exo Nation, our guest this hour has been Loyd Auerbach. And if you'd like to send him an email, share an experience, ask him a question, profparanormal@gmail.com. And if you'd like to contact the Forever Family Foundation, their website is foreverfamilyfoundation.org. Well, that's it for tonight, Exo Nation. That's it for this week. I'd like to thank everybody here at Master Control, my producer, a good friend who couldn't find that song earlier tonight, the one and only Craig West, Mac Alexander over there, who's our International Director of Programming, and my best friend, my wife, and my senior executive producer, the one and only lovely Laura. And to you, the members of the Exo Nation, thank you for allowing us to be part of your day or night, no matter where you are on this great big world of ours. Remember, we are each other's brother. Take care of each other. Give your child, your wife, your friends a hug. Let them know that they're loved, because we all need that connection. And always remember to keep your eyes to the sky and your heart to the light. From my heart to yours, good night, everyone.